Australia will end up by mid-century with a much larger populace, which of course means there's more people spending, there's more people to sell goods to. Migration will continue to contribute to the output of Australia. Welcome to the Urban Property Investor. I'm your host, Sam Saggers, here to help you crack the code of real estate wealth. Today's show, we're going to dig into Australia, the two worlds which are unfolding. And of course, you, the investor, and the system itself. Is the system broken for property investors? Is the system broken to build wealth? Let's talk about it, because the odds of people becoming wealthy in Australia are diminishing. And of course, for a lot of people, when they get their first taste of a bit of wealth, they take their money off the table and end up basically going into a position where they basically hoard money instead of reinvesting it for more wealth. But of course, here in Australia, there is really an economy, but arguably there is what is known as a dichotomy. In other words, two different experiences unfolding for the different people within the economy. The dichotomy paradox. Today, we're going to dig into what that looks like, what Australia is doing, what you can do, and of course, what the system is like for people to build wealth in this country. So that's what's happening. I hope that sounds riveting, because I'm excited to deliver the information. But first, we have a shout out. Yes, I have taken way too long to do this shout out because I got a review. And you know what happens when you get a review? You get a shout out. And of course, this one comes from none other than Geo1232. Yes, Geo1232. Sounds rather like a robot put that there, but no, I think Geo1232 could be a human being who just basically does not want to put their name on the rating system. But that's okay, we'll take it, Geo1232. Who notes the program is 100% their favorite property podcast. Well, I appreciate that, and also notes that I should start living it up. So maybe I'll take Geo1232's advice and start spending some cash, living large. Let's go large. But hey, it is a good reminder that actually there is two worlds, people with some money in the economy and people who are struggling to make ends meet. And I think we need to take a look at what Australia's up to, what you're up to as a property investor. And of course, if the system is ready for you to create wealth, or it basically puts up brick walls. But you know the drill, folks. Play the program in double speed, get your life back. And of course, all the episodes I have done are lessons. So feel free to go back in time if you love a good lesson. But Australia is now a dichotomy. It is no longer a single economy. It is full of prosperity. It is full of opportunity. But for a lot of people, it is also a struggling place where the cost of living is eating a lot of people alive. Of course, so many people are dependent on the future pension. I was just at Woolies. Yes, good old Woolies. And I was buying my groceries. As you do when you're interested in economics, you ask questions. And I had a good chat with the checkout chick as my 6,000 items were being scanned through the scanner. And I asked her sort of, what does she see? Does she see that a lot of people struggle to fill the grocery basket, or what was the cost of the grocery basket that she typically rings through the cash register? And she was saying for a typical family of around 4 people, they're spending around $800 to $900 a week in that particular Woolies, grocerying up So there you have it, $800 and $900 a week. That's not a small amount of money. That's a decent hit, isn't it? And of course, if you can imagine, with an implied inflation rate into the future, if we fast forward 10, 20 years, that's going to be $1,200, $1,300 a week. So it's no wonder so many people sort of fall behind and end up in a place where in the economy, they are actually the ones struggling to keep up. And of course, this creates two worlds, a dichotomy, a people with money and people without money. And of course, inside of Australia, those that tend to have money tend to have it because of real estate. And really, there's been some books written on this concept that really quite often people become wealthy in this country out of really no productive means from themselves. In other words, they just become investors, they just become property owners. They don't really add any value to the real estate, but what happens is society around them adds value. Society grows, new train lines are created, new infrastructure is injected into the economy. Money is spent from taxpayers to build a brighter future for Australia, and the beneficiaries are people that own property. And ultimately, they get really what is in some terminologies known as free riding or free rent. They get extra growth on their investments, they become wealthy, but really they don't do a hell of a lot other than control real estate. And the reason it is termed that way is quite often once you own real estate, you don't really have to do much to produce anything. It's not like you're running a factory with people doing production. It's not like you're innovating, doing advanced things for the economy. You're simply just sitting on a plot of land or a home or an investment or a property, and you get a result off the back of that. But Australia will grow. We know Australia's going to grow, and we can go to some of the reports on what the future of Australia looks like, intergenerational reports on where the future is headed. Really, there's some major forces shaping the Australia's economy. You've got population aging. You've got obviously the expansion of digital and data services through technology, things like AI, which will reposition how the workforce, particularly in the knowledge economy, adapts to that transformation. You've got net zero 2050, the climate change concepts, which are impacting industries left, right, and centre. And of course, you've got a rising demand for aged care services, which are shaping the economy around certainly how many people need to work in health services. And in some respects, you are starting to see that government money injected through the NDIS is really a massive money spinner for GDP. It's basically circulating in the economy. And of course, you've got this increased segmentation inside of Australia of those with money and those without. And of course, into the future, you're going to have to see a changing industrial base to support a much older Australia. You're going to see a change in industrial base around knowledge work and new technologies. And of course, a changing industrial base around net zero transformation, which I talk about a lot, so I won't dig into all of that. But where that leaves people is quite often a bit of a tough situation, because we have a lifespan, and quite often Australia's lifespan is up there with some of the best in the world. People are going to live long. And for a lot of people listening on this call, on this pod, you could be living to the ripe old age of 95 years of age, which sounds fantastic. who doesn't want to live as long as possible? I've got a friend who has a oxytocin machine. Yes, oxytocin is that feeling you get from hugging someone. And he hugs his oxytocin machine every morning because he has a belief that he's going to live longer by hugging an oxytocin machine. We all need an oxytocin machine. But our lifespan is well over 90, or forecast to be well over 90. Our work span, though, is a lot different. And our work span can be affected by things like offshoring to more affordable labor marketplaces. I know inside of our business, we offshore a lot of mundane work into overseas operators through offices in, for example, the Philippines. So offshoring's real. And of course, AI is now real. AI, of course, will influence the positioning of a lot of jobs. A lot of jobs will become redundant. The milkman one day delivered milk to people's houses. The milkman is no longer. And of course, if you think about your lifespan, but then you think about your work span, it's going to be interrupted over the next 15 and 20 years. And of course, this will create redundancies in the marketplace. It's real. It's going to happen. Some people will be made redundant. And of course, when you're made redundant, as long as there's another job out there, you're going to be perfectly fine. Which, of course, there will be jobs out there, because one of the productivity challenges for Australia is really a skills shortage. There's just not enough workers in the economy because a lot of people are leaving the economy through growing older. But it may mean you need to constantly reskill, constantly be learning. And I say this to everyone, best way to become wealthy is to actually earn more money and put some of that money into the market and leave it there and redeploy more money into the marketplace. But our lifespan, our work span, and of course, finally, our health span are all different, and they break down at different points. Our health span for a lot of people is 55 years of age. You start to become less healthy. For a lot of people, they start to put themselves in a position where they simply can't do the job that they were once doing, particularly if you use your body as a tool to make money. And think about all the people that work for a living, that climb up ladders, that put their body on the line every single day to make this economy tick over. A lot of those people just simply can't use their body for ever. And of course, one of the advantages to being a knowledge worker is, in theory, your knowledge can outpace that health span of movement. And so you could actually be a knowledge worker as long as your brain's ticking over, as long as you're having that fish oil when you're 85 years of age. But the challenge for this is a lot of people don't plan ahead to have the appropriate wealth that mirrors a lifespan, work span, and of course a health span. And of course you add into things like other dramas like marital breakdowns or injuries or even the loss of a partner through death. There's a lot of challenges that people need to gear up for. And this is where the system is really broken. Most people I speak to don't have a will. They don't have insurance if they, for some reason, stop work because of some sort of health injury. There's a lot of people walking around in society just based on hoping to get to the other side, hoping to get through. And of course, Australia will have a positive economic outlook, and that positive economic outlook will again create a free ride for those people with real estate, with those people with assets. Effectively, over the next 40 years, real incomes will grow by 50%. Economic growth is projected to be around 2.2% per annum. And of course, Australia will end up by mid-century with a much larger populace, which of course means there's more people spending, there's more people to sell goods to. Migration will continue to contribute to the output of Australia. But of course, there's going to be this significant rise in centenarians. We're going to have a lot more people reach the age of 100, a lot more people living a lot longer. And of course, this means that there's going to be a bit of a mismatch in the system. To give you some context, in 1976, 1 person in 7 people was over the age of 65, meaning 6 people out of 7 was working, effectively capable of entering the workforce. In 2001, 1 person in 5.3 people was over the age of 65 in Australia. And of course, this meant a lot more taxpayers at the bottom, but not as good as 1976. Really, you could say in 2001, we found an economy that we're now using a lot to create prosperity. In 1976, the economy was very different to that of 2001. However, the economy of 2030 is very much aligned to the economy of 2001 compared to that of 1976. In 2030, 1 person in 3 will be over the age of 65, meaning there's basically 2 workers for every older person, which is an interesting math, a very interesting math. It's going to put a lot of pressure on the system. And we're going to see the participation rate gradually decline over this decade and into the next decade, where today the participation in work is very, very high. 66% of people work in this country. And of course, that takes out people who are retired and people who are basically children. So that's a very high, basically participation rate, very high, the highest it's ever been. But what is going to start to eventually unfold is people are going to leave the workforce, and there's not going to be those people here to replace them. And so the participation rate will drop to 63%. And this is going to no doubt push wages up because there's less people to do the work, but equally we're going to see an alignment of this challenge through things like AI. You're also going to have participation challenges because one of the biggest cohorts that is alive today is having children. So a lot of millennials take time off to have children and come in and out of the basically workforce. And in my company, we have this all the time. There's a lot of people getting jiggy with it in my company. There's a lot of love. Because there's a lot of love, there's a lot of babies. And because there's a lot of babies, people have to obviously take time out to have the children. And of course, this creates a mechanism of productivity challenge for businesses, and it's pretty widespread. And of course, it's just something you work through as a business owner, but it's a reality of productivity inside of the economy. Now, when it comes to the dichotomy, it's real. We have a economy, but the economy basically has now split in two. And of course, for pensioners, this is a real challenge because you've got a basically a lot of people who are dependent upon welfare, or they must still work to survive. Now, as you know, I Uber and I also taxi. I am actually in the market for a car, but I'm not going to rush into it because I want a great car. I don't want I don't know, just regular car. So at the moment, I am carless. So I travel a lot in Ubers and taxis. And I can tell you, particularly with taxis, a lot of the people who drive those taxis on a Monday night, on a Wednesday night at 6 o'clock are 75-year-old gentlemen. And I have a good chat with them about their world, and most of them have to supplement their pension with a bit of cash because they just cannot survive off the pension system. And of course, I don't know if you've Googled the latest numbers for the pension, but it's something like $27,000 for a single person per annum. And of course, around 40-odd thousand for a couple. So it's not a lot of money, but yes, you can catch the bus for $1, which must feel good if you're a pensioner. I know some of my family members just get on the bus for the day because they only spend $1 and they feel good and they ride the system. But if you don't want to ride the bus system for $1 and you want to end up in a place where you've got some money, you might want to become a property millionaire. You might want to become a multi-millionaire. You may want to become a deco millionaire from real estate, because the system is failing a lot of people who have never been taught how to invest in a capitalist society. The problem with Australia is we are capitalists. We are not socialists. We do not live in a country which is designed to socially look after you. If we did, we wouldn't have to invest. Now, as a young man, I lived in a socialist society. I lived in Sweden. Everyone was taxed at a very, very high rate. Everyone kind of lived the same. It's a very socialist environment. Property investment really wasn't a thing. Property ownership, for the most part, wasn't an ambitious protocol. Of course, people owned real estate, but equally, there was no shame in being a renter for life. But here in Australia, without question, there is a turning point because a lot of pensioners today never had superannuation. However, the workforce coming out of the current system have had a piece of super. It'll be interesting by the time Gen Z finish their working career. Gen Z are basically the people who've just entered the workforce now. They will really probably be the first generation that, without question, has had superannuation for their entire journey. And so I would imagine by the time Gen Z basically become 60 years of age, which is 40 years from now, there will be an eradication of the government pension system. I can't see the point of the pension system existing. But if you're closer to the pension age or the age of retirement, it's some interesting facts that really people aged around 60 odd years of age, the average male has around $380,000 in superannuation, and the average female, a lot less. A lot of the time they have to take time out of work, and there's obviously some wage inequality, have around $240,000. So you can see, I don't know about you, but I don't think you could live off $240,000 as a female in retirement without basically blowing that pretty quickly. And of course, if you've got no money, one of the indicators of an early death is running out of money. So the dichotomy will see people with money live a lot longer and people without money pass away a lot sooner. It's a sad truth of economics. You just have to examine Monaco. Monaco, yes, the principality inside of Europe where everyone's got money, people actually live the longest. Yes, look at the average age of someone passing away in Monaco. It is over 93 years of age. So I would imagine as health standards improve, as we work out how to keep people alive longer, those Monacoans will all be centenarians because of their ability to have financial freedom. But it's interesting. I've got a lot of lady friends and I do worry for them because a lot of women have not been able to meet their alpha male. A lot of ladies today are going it alone. They're not getting married. They're not partnering up. And of course, they're having children and they're doing it all by themselves. But one of the challenges, of course, is just how much money they take into their financial space. And I've got a lot of friends who basically have never even had superannuation because they do certain jobs which are basically pretty contract driven. They're like massage therapists and things like that. And they kind of work a couple of shifts a week and just barely, make ends meet. And they'll end up basically in this strange dichotomy of like not having anything later in life. And of course, if you're going to live a long life, you've got to be able to go, well, when does my work span end? And of course, for a lot of people in those type of roles, for example, you're using your hands all day, and even that becomes quite challenging as you get older. It's very different to knowledge work. So the dichotomy, though, is very, very, very broken because Australia stands on the brink of what is arguably the biggest economic shift ever. Over the next decade, by way of example, there is an estimated $3.5 trillion just in the next decade being passed from people passing away, older baby boomers, older builders, to their offspring. And it's around a $3.5 trillion intergenerational wealth movement over the next decade alone. It's in total a $6.1 trillion movement if you add the next decade in as well. Now, to put that in context, the share market in Australia, the ASX, is valued at $3.5 trillion. The property market is valued at $10 trillion. So just over the next decade, there's going to be about a $3.5 trillion titanic shift. It's going to absolutely reshape the real estate community because obviously if there's more money coming into the marketplace, there's going to be sales, it's going to be increased sales volumes, there's going to be different pathways for that wealth to follow. And of course, what this is going to do again is make it very, very difficult for those uninvested to keep up. And it's going to mean the uninvested go to more speculative areas to get going. And they're going to have to think through what that looks like, the risk and return, and adjust for the risk of basically not being able to invest in the best areas. And of course, below that is a tier of people that will just choose to never invest. And for a lot of people today, that is the reality of their world. The system is failing them. They cannot keep up with the system of Australia. So if you think about the wealth transfer over the next decade, it's broken down. If you were to take every Australian, the $3.5 trillion, that's effectively around $130,000 per Australian. That is going to come into existence over the next decade. However, not every Australian is going to get $130,000. It's not going to work that way. A dichotomy. One economy will get a lot of it. The other economy will get none of it. It's just the reality of the situation. Now, my voice is falling apart, so I'm going to have some water. So I apologize for slurping. So everybody block your ears. Oh my God, I'm alive. Yes, water. Okay, here I am. Hello. I'm back. The soothing sounds of my voice are back to annoy you. But of course, the system is also linked to that of advice. And of course, for a lot of people, they just choose not to get advice, whether they have wealth or whether they do not have wealth. And that is the most challenging part, because there's studies on even people receiving intergenerational wealth, just blowing it. There's something like 1 in 20 families end up passing on more wealth than they were given or inherited. So you can imagine that, all that money coming through, and only 1 in 20 are going to make more with that money rather than just spend it. And we see this all the time. As soon as people get a little bit of wealth, they stop. They just don't become a capitalist. They don't reinvest their money. And it happens in property investment. Someone will make a couple of $100,000 and then go, that's it, I'm out. I'm getting out of the game. I'm leaving the monopoly board. And really, that's probably the worst thing you can do because of inflation. Inflation will make it tough. You've got to keep going. You've got to keep investing. And the real wealthy people that I see basically never take money off the table. They just keep going and keep going. You think about all the millionaires that could just take money off the table, all the Harry Triggerboffs, the players in the game. They don't need to invest, but they do. They do, because wealth is a framework of leaving money in the marketplace and watching it compound over time. But the system is failing because advice itself has been legislated to basically be removed from the system. For example, financial planners, which of course should be the cornerstone of advice for people in society, have been basically decimated. They've been removed. There's been all sorts of royal commissions, banking inquiries, financial services royal commissions, education changes, governance, which has basically made it virtually impossible for financial planners to stay in the system. I know when I'm recruiting for a property investment advisor, I get a lot of financial advisors apply for the role. And obviously a financial advisor has a lot larger skill set quite often than a property investment advisor. And it's sad to see that so many financial planners are being chased out of the system, because it's quite regulatory. It's very difficult to offer advice. You can end up getting sued 27 different ways just by being an advisor. There's a lot of consequences to being a financial advisor. And of course, when you think about it, there is so many financial gaps in people's world. There's people pay too much tax. People don't know how to sell down their home and redeploy money. People's savings are being eroded. People don't know how to save anymore. It's kind of crazy that people cannot just print off their bank statement and look at line by line what they've been spending money on and then go, well, do I really need that in my world? A lot of people have a lack of assets. They just don't have enough assets to reach a financial outcome later in life. People don't know how to work their super. They don't take charge of their super. Super is kind of an afterthought. It's just something that your work employer pays money into. It doesn't need to be that way. You can absolutely end up paying a lot less tax if you work out how to work your superannuation properly and even set up a self-managed super fund. People have no real plan to retirement. They have no safeguard against their health span, no safeguard against their work span, and for the most part, don't know how to pay off their mortgage and really align paying off their mortgage and owning assets to a date or a time horizon. And of course, some people in the dichotomy are going to end up with wealth being transferred to them. They don't know what that looks like. 1 in 20 people won't use that, will use that money well. 19 out of 20 will probably end up blowing it. And of course, then there's the polar opposite end where people are going to be reliant upon government handouts. And it's kind of unnecessary, because if you seek out the right financial advice, you will lower the amount of problems you have moving forward. It's just common sense. You can end up mortgage free. You can end up deploying capital into income producing assets. You can end up with multiple assets that will look after you in retirement. You can use your superannuation wisely to not only end up in a place where you have an abundant amount of super, but certainly more super than just not paying attention to how much super you actually have. And of course, you can enter early retirement. You can be the owner of several homes. You can have holiday homes. You can look after your children. You can put yourself in a position to win, which for a lot of people, they just don't plan for this. And of course, a good financial planner can help you with that are investments that are appropriate to you. They can set up savings plan. They can get the most out of your super. They can minimize your tax. They can set up estate planning rules for you. They can make sure your children are taken care of financially should you pass away. They can get the most out of your super. They can set up any future aged care issues when it comes to what your retirement looks like. They can create a desired lifestyle outcome for your world. They can put you in a position where you're not going to worry about money and it's not going to impact your health, whether it be your physical health or your mental health. And they can set you up in a framework where you travel regularly, you drive a nice car, you have the world at your feet. And of course, for a lot of people, they just simply don't value advice. They don't value advice. And then the government makes it so regulatory challenging to even get advice. Most people just shy away from it. You have to say, well, does the government actually not want you to get advice? Do they actually prefer that in a economy which was reliant upon spending, where everyone works in services? 80% of Australians work in a service industry, whether they're serving through helping you buy real estate, whether they're serving you a green Thai curry, whether they're massaging your back, whether they're down at Bunnings serving you at the cash register to buy some fence wire. It's a services economy. So if it's a services economy and there's money that needs to come into the services economy, is it actually better for government for you to blow the lot and die early? Pretty powerful. I don't know. Maybe I'm upsetting everyone. But to me, it would seem more feasible for you to die early and spend the lot, because that would be better for the system rather than living forever and actually spending the lot, but in a more structured way, in a more aggregated way. And when basically retirement was set up, it was set up sort of 100 years ago by the Germans. And originally it was set up to kick in at age 65, this kind of idea of the pension. But the average life expectancy was 63. So you were never meant to basically receive a pension. You were meant to die before you received a pension. Really, because of basically advanced ways of living, modern health, in Western cultures, a sense of living longer, better health treatment. People are living a lot longer and the system kind of doesn't gel. So one could argue that basically the dichotomy is designed for you to basically not make it to the end of your work, life, and health span. And I think the world of governance is designed to make sure you don't get the right advice along the way, because if you did, that would mean you basically are around a lot longer. Maybe for government, they see some angles in that maybe isn't the best thing for productivity. Now, to give you some context, there are basically 16.4 million people in Australia in the workforce that could do with financial advice, whether it's starting out buying a property portfolio, whether it's going back a step further, just working out how to save, working out how to not spend $800 a week at Woolworths. That advice could be a game changer. But the number of advisors, actual financial advisors in Australia, is 15,677. So the ratio of 16.4 million people to 15-odd thousand advisors is completely broken. And again, the right financial advisor is undersupplied in the marketplace at the moment. And that means they can charge a decent amount of money to offer financial advice. And of course, for a lot of people, the idea of spending $20,000, $30,000, $10,000, $5,000 on someone giving you advice makes them very anxious, and they start to get, what could I possibly get for $25,000 worth of advice? And really, there's no abundance to that mindset. It's kind of very, very frugal kind of thinking. And of course, it's people put themselves in that frugal thought process because of really the way they come out and through the system. But when you think about it, wealth, protection, cash flow, property, estate planning, taxes, superannuation, bad debt, good debt, investments, insurance, all of it needs to be put into some sort of structure. Wealth is a system. Businesses are systems. If you can't create a system, you've got no business. That's the reality of it. And so instead of paying someone whereby there are a lot of consequences to the advice they give you, a lot of people basically now get what I refer to as advice from people who have no consequence behind giving you the advice. You get celebrity experts on TikTok today. You've got Uncle Wally at the barbecue giving you advice. No consequences to Uncle Wally's barbecue advice. If it's bad advice, it doesn't really matter, does it? Because you're the one that basically listened. The know-it-all friend, the social media influencer, you've got the mate who basically just listened to a podcast or a blog, read a blog, they're giving you advice. And of course, probably the most infamous is the life coach. Without credentials. There's so many life coaches now without credentials. They've been a life coach for 6 months. They're having a change of career. They need people to experiment on, and you're the experiment. You're the life coach experiment. Of course, that life coach could be living on a coastal beach or even talking to you from Bali, from downtown Canggu, giving you credible advice on how to build wealth and live your life. Of course, even today, property people do their best to give advice, right? Like I don't want to be giving people advice. I want to be putting deals together. But this is the reality of it. Today, I'm giving advice. Geez, why am I giving advice? I don't know. I give advice because I've got 30 years of being lashed on the back and I study failure. That's really what I do. That's my advice. Study failure. But that's the reality of it, folks. You've got this kind of weird paradigm where what you control, what you can control, and what the system is designed to do is different. You've got to align yourself with the system. I guess if you think about it from a sports analogy, like, do you think people end up at the Olympic Games without having a coach, without having a team? I was watching the tennis and, watching the final of the tennis. And, in the corner of the two people that made it to the final was an entourage of 4 to 5 people. Do you think that those people aren't valuable? They're the team of experts around the tennis player. You often see this. You could even look at Nick Kyrgios, who has no team around him, great tennis player, full of awesome talent, no coach, no mentor, no advisors, just does it alone. Never wins a Grand Slam. Great player, but doesn't go the full distance. Then you've got that person with less natural talent than, say, Kyrgios, but has a full team around them, support, emotional support, mental support, guidance, and they win the Grand Slam. I think the lady who won the women's Grand Slam, Alicia Keys or something, they asked her, how did you win the Grand Slam? And she said she had mental support. That's what the game changer was in her career. She started out on the women's tour at age 14. She couldn't win a slam until she was 29 years of age, until she identified she needed a team. And so I'm probably waffling now, but the point of the conversation is you've got to build a team. Buyer's agents, investment agents, financial planners, property investment advisors, finance brokers, tax accountants, lawyers. They're all designed, if you put them together properly, to build a system that can take you the distance of investment. Investment is not just about buying a property. It's the easy part. It's owning the property. It's lowering tax. It's becoming mortgage free. It's getting your super sorted. All of that stuff is wealth creation. Buying a property, doing a little reno is buying a property and doing a little reno. That's two different worlds. So the Muppets, the government, don't want you to succeed. Just think of it that way. And Australia has a dichotomy. People who will become wealthier and wealthier and use the financial planners, and people that won't. Some people will end up lucky receiving inheritance and blow it because they don't have the right team behind them. So wherever you are on your journey, we're all on different journeys. There's always different starting points to the game. Just make sure that you don't skimp on advice. That's the message for today's pod. All right, well, that's it from me. Lovely talking to you. Now I'm off. I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm going to have a lunch today. Yes, a lovely lunch. I do know what I'm going to do. All right, the waffle continues. Let's stop the waffle. We should have a little t-shirt. Stop Sam's waffle. All right, folks, have a good one. I'll catch you on the next episode as we talk more. Thanks for tuning in to the Urban Property Investor. To never miss an episode, make sure you subscribe to the podcast on your favorite app or on YouTube. I would love it if you could give the show a rating and share it with your friends and family. In between episodes, you can always keep in touch with me by connecting on social media over Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn. Until we meet again on the next episode of the Urban Property Investor, take care and bye for now.